This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Me, I Am Mental, the podcast, where we discuss all things mental. Our aim is to provide factual, credible, useful, and engaging information on mental health. My name is Charles Adede.
And my name is Darren Collins. And we are joined here today with Rubie Miseda.
Well done.
And welcome. Once again, part of this podcast is just, we're Charles and I aren't experts by any means. We're just people who are interested in the subject. And we thought that there's space in the mental health discussion for amateurs like ourselves to just explore and learn about mental health in general. And especially, I think we're sort of thinking in terms of being people who live in Kenya and Nairobi in particular. And so there's sort of a point of view that comes from just living here and what experiences are for us in the mental health space. Now, having said that, it's free of charge for you, but of course you can help us by just sharing this with other people who might also be interested, and also going to all of our socials and clicking like and all that sort of stuff. meimental.me is where you can find us, and that's where all of the blogs and content and advice stuff and things that we have curated for our audience can be found at meimental.me, and there you can find us. You can find all the directions to our Facebook page and our Instagram page, etc. But so that's sort of the business we have to take care of for now. Let's get started.
Thank you, Darren.
Hi, Charles. It's good to see you.
Likewise, it's been a minute, hasn't it?
It has been a minute.
Yeah.
A terrible one.
Oh yeah, there's stories there, aren't there?
Oh yeah.
Like Kigali, Rwanda, Nakuru,
Mombasa.
and then Mombasa, and yesterday.
A lot, yeah.
Okay, how's Kigali?
It's almost like a movie, like a science fiction movie. Like it's unreal how nice it is.
Oh,
like it's haunted. like there's no mistakes. Like there's no trash anywhere. Like no one just occasionally does this. Like what's going? Yeah, but it's great and it's amazing. Yeah. Okay. I didn't see any gorillas. Not in the airport. Not in the bus station. I was sort of oversold, I think, to me.
Because I think you have to do like maybe a bit of a drive into the bush.
Yeah, that's not how it was explained to me. I
thought
there was
thought
gorillas
like
in Rwanda. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So that was a letdown.
And Nakuru, how was your comedy show? Because I know you guys are in the process of trying to spread, the comedy.
Spread the good cheer. It was the
Yes.
best. It was the best. It was a poolside show, about 140 people. And I think it was actually, so Rubie, you may not know this, and there's no reason you should know this, but I do stand-up comedy with Stand-Up Collective and Punchline Nairobi. And so we had a show in Nakuru, and it was the first time I felt love from the audience.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's there, so everyone's laughing, having a good
Yes,
time, but this time we could breathe together. I had a 20-minute set, and it lasted 28 minutes, which for a comedian means that's how many laughs you had. I had so much laughs that my material took 8 minutes longer than normal. So that was really nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But you're only as good as your last set.
Yes.
So I bombed on Wednesday.
What happened?
It's just, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened, but nobody liked me. So I'm here. I have very poor mental health right now. Because you're only as good as the very previous set.
I know.
But thanks for laughing at me right now.
Yep.
You should have.
You're not supposed to laugh at your mental health.
Anyway, let's find out about our guests.
All right.
Well, how are you doing? Are you doing okay?
I'm good. I'm good. I just had a brutally busy week. Because so last weekend I didn't get to take a break. And the week I was hoping like the week would ease up. It didn't. Up to I think Friday, I was doing quite badly. But it was productive nonetheless. I think I should probably take better care of myself now. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm good, thankfully. Yeah. Okay. So now let's turn our attention to a very special guest today.
Rubie
Her name-
is a psychologist practitioner
Yes.
trained in clinical psychology.
Yes.
Yes.
But your specialty is, can you clarify that for us?
Well, I do a combination of clinical work
Mhm.
and at the same time, I try and bring in the whole sociology part. And I was also a trained support worker when I was in the UK. So
Mhm.
I also try and provide that. So depending on the member, so I call my clients members, and they're part of the Jipende Wellness community. So depending on the case that I have, I try and bring in my skill sets, my diverse skill set,
Mhm.
to try and provide them a better service on what they need. Because I realize that everybody's uniquely designed, and I'm practicing in a different society, a society that has a combination of culture, religion, specific gender roles, and then at the same time, Kenya is also changing. There's a lot of social change in different
Yeah.
generations. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there is sort of a unique thing happening here compared to, like you said previously, at the UK.
I guess in the UK, they're way ahead of us when it comes to mental health. They have different specialties. They have mental health support workers. They have support workers. They have forensic psychologists. In Kenya, we don't have many diverse specialists in mental health at the moment.
Oh.
But I do see that it will gradually start to change, because at least with the previous government, they realized that mental health is really important in Kenya.
Mhm.
So, they did the whole mental health task force that was headed by, I think, Dr. Jenga. He's a psychiatrist. So just imagine that if you compare the years of how the mental health industry has grown in the UK and here, we're like toddlers, or shall we say babies.
Okay.
But it is starting to change.
Okay.
I would imagine that even some of the what would be the word for it? The situations that people find them in here culturally are
Mhm.
significantly different than UK, and maybe even not even existent in the UK, where there's sort of the traditional ways and the very, 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 very modern ways, and yet people are sort of clashing constantly.
Mhm.
Everyone's still going to shags, everyone's going to upcountry, and they're dealing with sort of two worlds.
Yeah.
You're trying to balance your brain into two different worlds.
Sure, but at the same time, the UK is also very cosmopolitan. So
Mhm.
they do have people from different ethnical backgrounds that have also brought their tradition and their culture there.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I've also started to notice is I'm starting to get also members who are outside of Kenya, people who are in the diaspora, or even if they're not Kenyan, they are from, they're either, Indian heritage or,
Mhm.
Muslim or Arab heritage. I guess maybe because of whatever I'm working on, they feel comfortable seeing someone with the type of skill set, and also my experience of the fact that I didn't live in, I've also lived outside Kenya.
Yeah.
So they feel that I understand that whole experience of being in your home country and then being in another country. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to, firstly, this is something we typically do here, is that you remember I talked to you about, I told you about Kenyans loving to sorora a bit, which is like shorthand for getting to know someone personally a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we'd like to go there a bit. You share with us a bit about your personal background, how you took an interest in mental health, what it's been like trying to create a career, how you got to Jipende eventually.
Yeah.
So perhaps we'd start with so who's Rubie?
So,
yes.
my full names are Rubie Barbara Achieng Miseda, right? I am a firstborn. I am the eldest grandchild from my mom's side of the family, not my father's side of my family. I grew up a lot with my mom's side of the family. I'm very close with my cousins. We grew up together, went to the same schools. And I guess I come from a very, very large family with such diverse personalities and family setups. And growing up, I was a bit conflicted, as a child, as a teenager, to try and understand why I feel the way I feel. And why is it that a lot of my emotions were being invalidated? And I'm not saying pertaining my family, but it could be outside. And when I was in high school, I took sociology and child development, and that sparked my interest to start wondering, okay, something is starting to add up. And then took a different turn, did business marketing, and then, interacting with my friends, my personal experience, and I was wondering, there's something literally not okay with how we build relationships with each other in family setups and also with friends. And when I was in university in my second year, in my final year, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety and a bit of anorexia. I was really, really small. And I've also had moments like that when I was even 9 years old. So meaning that my mental health wasn't okay. And then when I was 27, I found out from my family that the school I went to had diagnosed me with mild dyslexia. So I never knew a lot of these things. So bear in mind, now I'm 31. I'm finding out a lot of things about my own mental health that I didn't know. So when I was 18, I wanted to do psychology because I wanted to understand the development of social behavior in Africa and why we treat each other the way we treat each other. Why is it that some parents can't be able to even articulate that their child is suffering, but it's always their way or the highway? And this is just interacting with people around me. Why is it that there's certain things around me that were hurting me, but I was supposed to accept as being normal? So I do tend to overthink. So I was trying to investigate. Then I got a key interest in certain behaviors. So I was also interested in criminal behaviors. Like, I'm going to catch people. I'm going to find out. And I was doing it pertaining to men, because I was trying to figure out, why are you doing the things that you're doing? Like, why are you hurting people like this? And why are you telling me to sit there and say that it's okay? I don't think it's okay. But you're making me accept it as it being normal. And then when I go to the UK and I have a conversation with one of my housemates and I start telling her about a little bit about my experience and, other people's experience, she's like, that's not normal. And then when the department got involved and I was telling them about how I feel, and they even asked me, how did you even get this far? So that's when it clicked inside my brain that, oh my gosh, there's certain things that are normal in our cultural reality that we don't even question.
Yeah.
It's just being passed on from generation to generation, right?
In other words, if I'm understanding you correctly, we are sort of tone deaf in this neck of the woods when it comes to mental health, largely tone deaf. And therefore, people are hurting, but they're clueless.
Yes.
Okay. And that became apparent when you went to the UK and somebody could immediately pick up from your conversation that, hey, that what you went through was horrific.
Yes, imagine.
Okay.
Imagine.
Okay. So for them, it's something they would immediately pick up and maybe take corrective action. But for us, you just sort of hunker down and just, weather it.
Yeah,
that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, we live it and then we die with it, basically. Because just imagine how many generations have been passed on, and then now we have the whole, this generation is soft. In our generation, we were tougher. And you're asking them, listen, you guys are broken. Hence, you gave birth to us, and now we're broken, right? And it's very hard for the other generation to articulate that because it's normal, right? And then now we have this new generation speaking out and saying, I don't like how I feel. And then now you see the people who want to leave, that's what I call it, want to leave the earth and feel like they don't belong here. And their parents are wondering, what do you mean, right? So it's like not only in the parents, not only in your family, you also get it outside.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you start to question, is this a cultural reality? Is this a societal reality? If it's, because it can be isolated if you say that it's at home. But if you step out, if you go into learning institution, works institutions, and it's just the same thing, right?
Yeah.
People,
we had an incident recently, it wasn't recent, probably 2 years ago, where someone within our circle here, she found out her daughter was being abused by a family member, and she brought it to the police, and the female police officer was like, this happens.
Like live with it.
It's just a thing.
It's okay.
It happened to me, happened to, don't worry about it. And it's just like, this like confirmation from like that it's not just my family, it's sort of part of the culture, and even from some other like people that we would look to for help would also confirm that sort of strange or unfortunate bias towards what is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a real thing. And do you find that that's now a part of your specialty as a result of learning that, or?
Yes. So I ended up I created 10 wellness programs, but
You created what now?
Actually, before you even go there, so in the UK, I'd like to get a little more about.
Okay, sorry. I always want to jump right in.
So I wanted to
so many questions.
Because the UK also shaped, I'm assuming, it did shape your perception and your understanding of what's going on quite a bit, isn't it?
Yes, it did, and also traveling a lot. I was, I thank my parents for giving me the opportunity to be able to travel to different countries and learn how people interact with each other, even though it's holiday mode. But in the UK, yes, I learned a lot of how they have support for people who need assistance. And there was a case that I was a support worker to a man in his 30s, and he had Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This man lived on his own, right? He had his own car, and we were there to give him independent living, right? And he was also, I think, he's a spokesperson for people with his condition, and he was playing. He was like nocturnal, so he used to like playing games, but the way that he would use 2 fingers and blow through the straw and be able to, play his games and use the computer, it fascinated me that this man, if he was living in my country, he would have died. He wouldn't have enjoyed his life without the tools that it's been provided. So that shocked me at how this man, who honestly should be in his room all day, is having fun, has friends. We went for movies, and it showed me that the UK had provided assistance to make sure that he feels comfortable, and despite what condition he has, he can still live his life. Yeah.
Would you say that if somebody was to retort that, listen, those guys have the means, we don't, what would you say to that? Does it sort of, in terms of justifying how we roll, so to speak?
I think they have a lot of resources, but they also know how to use the money at that point in time. Obviously, they're way, way older than us. Kenya is just really like 60 years old, and in Africa, we do not have the best track record of funds being distributed really well. But if we could build the foundation, then we can be able to create the supports. Because the thing is that when you go see like a psychologist there, because I saw a psychologist there, and she was Caucasian, right? And I also had a psychiatrist, so I rejected the medication, so I was put on psychotherapy. They had everything. So if I needed to go somewhere, there was an organization they know, and they work from a multidisciplinary approach. So there's so much access to different things. that I recognized that wasn't here in Kenya.
So when you went there, you actually, why did you go to seek medical
Because
attention?
I was dropping weight drastically. I was not sleeping. I had very low moods and I couldn't complete my tasks, right? And I went to go see my GP on campus, and he started to ask me specific questions, and he was like, "Your weight is really, 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 really low." And that's when he's like, "Okay, this is what you're going to do." So I just followed what he told me to do. And honestly, the school asked me if I wanted to graduate, if I wanted to come back another year. I said no. So they said, "We're going to put in the right support for you to graduate," and I did. And I even went to do my master's 2 months later.
Fascinating.
So it's the way they dealt with the crisis that I was dealing with, and managed to put the right foundations to make sure that my mental health was intact, and also to go through a healing process. And even the first day I had a session, that was my first therapy session in my life. And the way the lady described it to me, and she told me a story of overloading a shelf with books, that one day it can fall down. She described that as my mental health. And honestly, I was fascinated because I never looked at myself that way. You're not taught to reflect in that manner. You can be told, don't share our business out there.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to, you're always told what not to do. But you're not, even when you're trying to process things, the kind of support you need at that time is not what is given. You're told, well, you'll get over it. Even me back in my day, this is how life is. But you see, I'm trying to articulate and process and understand what my emotions are, and what are the events that are causing me to feel that way. So once I went through that, I was like, okay, now I've gotten my answer. This is where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to study. Since I was young, the questions I was asking, this is the field that I'm going into.
There's a question that's come to my mind, or rather an observation. So you're saying you're in this situation, and for once in your life, somebody has allowed you to actually see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But over and above that, they don't hold it against you for feeling a certain type of way. They don't, because I think that's what happens generally. If you're unwell, especially with an invisible illness like mental health, more often than not, guys don't want the burden of helping you process it. They want you to get out of the way. You go fix yourself and come back later. But the picture you're painting here is one where you have people or a system that recognizes the issue, and then is compassionate enough to not sort of hold it against you, and helps you along and says, despite all this, we will work together to fix this, but also to help you achieve your dreams in life.
Yes, and the support I got it was not only one person. Obviously, I was studying criminology and sociology at that time. The Department of Criminology got involved. The Department of Sociology got involved. The International Department got involved. The Mental Health Department on campus got involved, and the GP got involved, and I graduated. So just imagine.
It's a tremendous support system.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then also I have to thank my friends too. And my housemates.
You're allowed to mention names.
Well, they know who they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's
and my family.
And your family,
Yeah.
yes. So if we look at our context again, the Kenyan context, and compare, say a student in your shoes in Kenya, what do you think they would go through? I just want to sort of And then another thing that comes to mind is the level of general awareness.
Yes.
Because you're saying that even people who are not directly, who are not necessarily psychologists or are involved as in that space, but they're aware and they're willing to circle the wagons around you in a very sensitive way.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating for me. But what do you think? How do you think you would have been handled here?
Well, it's because I haven't studied here in Kenya, I wouldn't really know deeply how the university is run, right? I can talk about based on just a few things that my members or the stories I've heard. But you see, I can't generalize. That would be very false of me. So I think that, well, currently there are mental health departments in certain Kenyan universities. I don't know which ones, right? But I do know Strathmore does. They did something like that. But I think I don't think the support that I got would be the way they intervened was very fast and they took their attention. But I don't know how it would have been done in Kenya, because I do remember, some people don't share the same attitude. And a lot of people don't have the same awareness. Maybe they could get it or maybe not, because mental health is still growing. But unfortunately, we are still losing a lot of our students to mental health in the universities. You can even hear it on the news, how the university students are talking about their experience. So based on that, I would say they don't have that type of support that I did. And that's unfortunate. But the hope is, and we hope it can change, these podcasts that you're doing, these conversations that other mental health professionals are having out there, I hope it would bring the attentions of us growing different institutions of support and educating maybe higher learning institutions on how to deal with mental health crises. Yeah.
Okay. Now tell us why you did criminology and where that led you.
Okay.
Extra all the time. You're like, all right.
Funny enough, I don't watch
those.
I don't watch crime shows, but there's this show that I watched on Netflix. I can't remember that it was the development of finding out how serial killers move and how they think. I found that very interesting. But I guess for criminology, I wanted to have all the disciplines: criminology, sociology, psychology, and philosophy, because I knew if I'm going back to Kenya, I really need to have a wide range of knowledge on how to navigate what's currently happening.
Was it always the plan that you would actually definitely come back with your trade to Kenya?
Yes, it was the plan in the long term, but then obviously I couldn't get a work visa, so I came back home. And then I wanted to do a PhD. I was actually planning to go and do my PhD, and Jipende was my PhD research proposal. But the reason as to why I wanted to study criminology was I was fascinated by how men mismanage finances.
What? Oh, got it. Okay.
But this is based on just my experience. I'm not saying it for other people. This is just, honestly, it's just personal. Yeah. Bear in mind, some of these things are just from my personal experience. But I was very fascinated because I was wondering why money is going, coming, why people are moving funny, right? I was also fascinated with the political, climate. Why is there so much corruption? Why do they think the way they think? I just wanted to know what goes through your mind.
So what did you learn?
Well, I would say okay, so I did do I did work as a private investigator for like about 3 months. So I learned that this is just basically from what I was doing. Can't generalize it for
Okay,
other
yeah, fine.
people. So I learned that people want to live a particular lifestyle that they cannot afford, right? And it's also a way of them proving that they're from a particular class. So people are stealing and scheming to maintain a lifestyle that they cannot afford and to be identified as someone as an upper class. But that's based on the cases that I was dealing with.
What would be the... So that's understood, I think. But why would someone even care about being perceived as being from a different class? Like, I've never understood that. Like,
because of power, because of status, because of respect.
so they live in a place where if you're lower income, you get less respect?
Yes. I even like historically, if you look at it, even in Kenya, even how our educational system, the education and language policy was put into place, right? I got to realize that Kenya was a very classist society, which helped with the sociology part.
Yeah.
So at least my education did become redundant. But no, to be honest, because when you're practicing so much psychology, you have other subjects that can wither away. But that's what I noticed, right? I even noticed people were, and then also there was also revenge. Yeah.
Revenge?
Yeah. Revenge.
Okay.
Revenge, money.
Would you like to just expound on that? That's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I dealt with some cheating cases.
Okay.
That was overtime, which was fun. But now, like practicing in psychology, I realized that a lot of people are in loveless relationships. Yeah. So people find love outside. So when you find that somebody's cheating on you, you go do the same, and vice versa, or you find ways of punishing them.
I see.
But as I said, these are based on the cases that I was dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's even if they are, I think they do speak to certain general truths about, because I think they do represent a vast majority of many things, the reasons why people do many of the things they do. In fact, when you're speaking about that, perhaps it would be interesting to know what your views are around. You're talking about people having this class issues, people having this loveless relations. In a way, generally speaking, does it point to a certain level of toxicity in the society when vis-a-vis mental health? And would you be able to then point us to what could be the potential causes of that?
Well, just imagine you were raised in a family where you never saw affection, and you just saw, a lot of arguments, right? And then you find that the arguments may have nothing to do with you, but then the person who is being attacked the most now attacks you, right?
I see.
Does that make sense? So it's like our emotional relationship with each other is affected based on an environment where you are alert. You don't know what kind of mood you might get. And it doesn't only pertain like parents, it can also pertain people who work for you in the household, or even your siblings, right? Aunties, uncles. And we treat each other very unkindly. And then what happens? We protect ourselves, our guards become up, and then we go out in the real world and we are very defensive. And then one day you meet someone, if you're lucky, who tells you that there's a different way to love. So then we're trying to fill this void.
So when you meet someone, essentially you go there, you're broken.
Sorry?
You're broken, and you go there, and you're hoping that this person who's probably broken as well is going to fix you.
Technically, yes. We do sometimes have certain unrealistic expectations for each other based on the pain that we carry. So instead of addressing what we've gone through so we can build a different type of quality of relationship, and this is not only romantic, this can also be platonic. And then we thought we can be triggered, and then you find someone snaps or someone wants to always be right. Or you'll have those who just don't share their opinion, they keep in silence because they want to keep peace.
The next question we have for you now is around sociology. I know you took time to study sociology.
Yes.
And I know sociology plays a big role in how you intervene with your members. And when we had a conversation some time ago, you said it's important to consider the factors that are at play in someone's life when you're attending to them. And that conversation for me was very, very fascinating. I think it would be something that people would also want to hear about. So perhaps you can just share with us your thoughts and views around that, including maybe a bit of background on your studies.
Yeah. So I do have a degree in sociology, and I guess I really enjoyed the degree more than criminology. I think in another life I would have been a sociologist, professor, something like that. But I guess what really fascinated me was the concept of culture and social change and social identity, and how we have primary socialization, which is where we're being raised by our parents, and how parents are not only your biological parents. You could even have social parents, which are your grandparents, your aunties, your uncles. And practicing here in Kenya, I realized that we're raised in a community setting. So a lot of our influences are not only pertaining mom and dad. There's so many family dynamics. It's not only nuclear family. There's also extended family. And someone like me who was, I lived in an estate where my neighbors were my mom's siblings and their children. We went to school together. During that era, we were like siblings.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm dealing with a case, it's really important for me to understand the person's story, the social changes that have happened, their identity, religious beliefs. Because we have Christians here, we have Hindus here, we have Muslims here. Those are the three religions that pop up. How does that make them view their mental health? How does that influence how they see the world, right? When I started dealing with a member from the Muslim religion, when I started to do more research, because I do read and try and see how I can improve things better and provide a better customized program for them, I realized that their identity is based on community. But you see, when we're trained in the mental health training systems that a lot of us have gotten, well, mine was basically, my education is British education. You have individualism, right? And that's something you were talking about. And I was having a conversation with one of my partners, and he's based in the UK, and he was basically saying that in the Western world, European world, they've mastered institution for individualism, right? But they struggle with community at times. But then when you come to Kenya and Africa, and people who come from countries that there's a lot of tradition still governing how we interact and how we build relationships and how we build our identity, we've mastered community, but we've not mastered individualism within the community.
A very, very fascinating take, isn't it? So it means that depending on your training and your personal circumstances, you may be well suited for, say, as a psychologist, for instance, you may be suited to deliver effectively in one setting, but you'll fail miserably in another, possibly. If you're not sensitive to that, you might not be very effective.
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the person who has been trained, and obviously with more research, more reading to try and broaden my understanding. Because as psychologists, we may know something, we may not know something today, and we may know something the next day.
Yes.
And one of the things that I was reading on, I came across the concept. There's this debate happening between white psychology and black psychology, or psychology of people from ethnical, cultural backgrounds. And they were saying that the training, and this is, bear in mind the conversation they were having, that the training that we as psychologists get is suited for white psychology than for people from ethnical backgrounds, ethnical cultural backgrounds. So it was fascinating, and I'm still doing more reading and trying to understand that a bit better. But what I understood when I was working with my members is that I need to understand them in a holistic way, because they're influenced by their religion, they're influenced by their tradition, they're influenced by their gender roles and gender norms, they're influenced by their socializations within schools, the institution. So if I did a thesis on the civilizing process of Western education in Kenya, and I was looking at the history of it. And I noticed that I noticed even in a lot of cases for members who have gone through the Kenyan system, there is also a lot of emotional trauma and identity-based performance from that institution. People have stress from the amount of workload. They're beaten. They're mistreated within the institution. Then they come back home, and then they have a hard time trying to process that this is what I've gone through. And you can even now see with the cases that are coming up now, we're losing a lot of young students who from these schools. But I'm not only saying them, we also have them in the international schools. But I'm speaking on that because I'm starting to see a trend with the adults. And a lot of my members have graduated from the 844 system. So I'm starting to see a very huge similarity between their experiences and the kind of, like, you can't freely express yourself. You have to conform. You'll be in trouble. You'll be labeled this. You'll be labeled that. And then gradually they come and see me, and then I start to tell them, well, let's dig deeper. So then I have to dig deeper and look at the sociological experience. Well, look at it from a sociological perspective to try and find out what's affecting their psychology.
Sociologically, you would, when you say sociological, and so if you're looking at concentric circles of influence, sort of, what do you look at? Like, would it be just within the family setting, maybe school, or do you go all the way to community, nation? How far do you...
So I start off first with whatever is given. We call them presenting complaints, whatever is given at that point in time. So then I always say everything is connected like a dot, right? So if they come and then they start to say, I don't understand what's going on with me, because a lot of people don't really know what's affecting them. They're feeling it, but they don't understand. So then I start to prompt them, and then we go deeper. And then if it's the school, we go deeper into family. We go deeper into societal. We go deeper. And then that's when I realized, okay, this is the normality being passed on. This is the mentality being passed on. This is the identity that is being passed on.
Are there areas where, in terms of sources of, shall I say, stress and tension, and would you say you have identified some parts of our society as being the causes of bigger problems than others? Is it school, family? Is it like an ethnic setup that just generally creates, more issues? Have you seen any such trends that you can?
I have. I've seen it, especially dealing with people from, as I said, diverse religious backgrounds and cultures. Like, even with the Indian community, they care so much about, that's something I learned. They care so much about what the community has to say, how you're supposed to behave. I even realized that a lot of also trauma is passed on from in-laws. Like there's a lot of, mothers-in-laws mistreating their daughters-in-laws, vice versa, and that's like a huge generational thing. I also learned about the whole concept of, I was trying to understand why is it that mothers-in-laws, African mothers-in-laws are so heavily involved in their sons' marriages, and they want to fight with their daughter-in-law. And then I realized, this is the son is a emotionally parentified husband to the mother.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to explain?
So
I get it already. She
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
Sorry, Charles, but you may explain it to Charles.
I'll definitely explain this to him. So then you find out that your parents are in a couple. They're married. They have now adult children, and you find that the son was stepping in emotionally for where the father was
absent.
Yes.
And the mom just keeps that going.
Yes, and then you find even mothers have molded their sons to be this fantastic man. Not all. These are just cases. There are so many. Yeah.
And then when the son gets married, she resents that woman. She's like,
yeah. You stole my perfect guy.
You've taken away my.
But she probably doesn't
what
even.
What is emotionally parental?
My emotional husband. Like, if you can simplify it like that.
And all this is happening subconsciously, so nobody really knows the dynamic.
Does it happen more with white people or black people?
Yeah, because I deal with lots of black people.
So it happens with them as much.
Even
as
even with other, it's quite interesting how even like the Arabs, the Indians, and the African, there's certain things we share. Yeah, but then with the one thing I've now that I've dealt with now Caucasian members. It's how they're very self-aware and how of a lot of things. So they're very in tune with their emotions.
I
totally.
Like they're very expressive, and they would, especially even the men, they can literally cry in front of me and just talk about their feelings, and it's fascinating for me because when I'm dealing with an African man or an Indian man, very different.
We are supposed to tough it out. I know that I often find that I create incredible awkwardness if I'm in a situation or a conversation and I'm addressing myself to how I'm feeling about something, and I sort of dwell on it a bit, trying to get into the nuances of my feelings, and I just see it's like guys want to move on quickly to football. Yeah. Shall we talk about football, please, please? And I think I don't know why I expect that we're just generally supposed to tough it out, and through processes like
it's pretty dramatic too. It's like a dramatic difference.
Yeah,
I'll just tell you, I had a woman I loved dearly died right in front of me 8 years ago here in Kenya, and I was just like, for me, I cried. I definitely was very upset and was definitely crying. And someone on the property, the management of the property, a woman, an African woman, came over and grabbed me and said, stay strong, whatever. And in retrospect, I was like, she was literally that uncomfortable with me crying. When someone just died right in front of me, and she was just. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, days later. But like her perspective was like, this is completely inappropriate. You need to be strong for everyone else who's here.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, no, I'm pretty sure crying is totally okay in this moment. Like I'm real sure that's an appropriate response. But hers was the opposite. And that was so dramatic, in retrospect, to see that perspective would exist. Like
you're right.
even in the center of trauma,
Yeah, imagine.
that you're supposed to like man up.
Yeah, that's.
I guess because and an interesting thing, I stumbled upon a scene just like that scene years later, and I saw a guy, an African guy, going through exactly what I was going through, and I stumbled onto the scene, and he was just like so bewildered, and he couldn't process anything, and his friends were there saying various things, and it was all sort of just like chaos, and I just grabbed him and I said, anything you're feeling right now is okay as long as you don't harm anyone else or harm yourself. Go for it. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. And he was like, okay. And and then I had to leave because it was too traumatic for me to watch it happen. But it just seems so clear as day. But is it literally a Caucasian versus African thing? Is it what's going on?
I guess it's also our understanding of masculinity in our community. Right, the roles that men play. They are providers, they are protectors. And if you see a man, in distress, you start to get concerned that this is a serious, like everything is going to.
It's falling
apart, right? And even the thing I've noticed is men's experiences and emotions are diminished. And even us women, we participate in upholding that identity for you guys, like encouraging you guys to have it, but at the same time we'll say we want you to be emotionally vulnerable, right?
So here's my personal experience. I had tried for a bit to explain to someone who I am and what my feelings and thoughts are about all manner of things. And I was so sure I'd gotten through to this person. And then many years later, I'm told, because it's as if I hadn't gotten through to them, and I was astounded. I was told, listen, but in as much as you told me all this, I know men don't feel anything. Would you believe it? It was so casually put across and with so much conviction. So it means that all this time this person can do anything to you and say anything to you, and they would imagine you're okay with it. Why would you be feeling anything? That's very stunning, isn't it?
Yeah, because emotions are considered weakness.
But don't they, like the Japanese, like they're a pretty ancient culture, don't they have like the warriors thing where like they learn the samurai, they like learn all this warrior technique, but they also write poetry, they learn calligraphy, and they express themselves artistically. But maybe artistic expression is not the same as emotional expression. I figure that.
Well, the thing is that, you see, if we take, for example, what you did for that man, you created a warm space for him. Well, you created a warm space for you to express how you feel?
No. I mean, because it's denied. Your expression, it's denied. You're not supposed to feel. It is assumed. Actually, the interesting thing is assumed you shouldn't feel, and therefore, if you're an anomaly if you're feeling.
Yeah, I just assume that true masculinity is you have a full range of emotions, and you don't lose control per se, but you have moments where you might be vulnerable. I mean, it just depends on what happens from there that defines whether or not I'm masculine. Do I break down completely, or do I break down enough to where I seek support, but I can still maintain my masculinity while expressing a full range of emotions? That's how I feel about it.
I totally agree with you.
Was that encouraged by also the setup in which you were being raised in? And
I don't know. I don't know if anything that was. My parents were pretty much stoic. I mean, my dad didn't speak. I don't know why I feel that way, actually.
Are you vulnerable with your friends?
Yeah, like going to a psychologist. I'm always like, you better give me advice, because me talking, I can do that to anyone. Like I'll talk to the secretary outside. I'll talk to the Uber driver. There's no difference in conversation between me and the Uber driver, me and you. So give me something, because talking's not enough. Yeah, I'm open.
I guess it's you can see the difference between the both of you, how you understand how to.
I don't like it when you look all the way down.
Sorry.
I feel really vulnerable.
Well, it's a safe environment, but you can see the differences even between the both of you, right? Even the way you're expressing yourself, the way he's articulating himself.
Yeah.
Completely different, right?
Yeah.
And
mine's better.
yeah, you know your emotional atlas system. You know, you're like, I don't like this, I don't like that.
No, but Charles and I can talk really easily. I mean, we can,
But I guess also because he's starting to, you're becoming more self-aware, isn't it? You're starting to understand the changes. But just imagine you're going to the rural area and you go tell that to.
Yeah, and I think
an older man who's looking at you, are you okay?
Yeah, because I think in terms of becoming more, maybe I was to a point aware that there was something, a sense of being blocked from accessing certain parts of myself. And I was trying to access it through other things, maybe literature, all manner, without necessarily just understanding that this is actually just you not accessing your emotions and embracing them for what they are. So you had all these other ways of trying to explain them to yourself. But about for the last 2 or so years, maybe 2 to 3 years, I began to understand. So it's a very recent phenomenon for me, just this, and so everything is very novel and yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, these are just contributing factors. People have different experiences.
Do any of these experiences have to do with the age of your parents? Like you're firstborn, so your parents were, I'm assuming, young when they were raising you.
For their age, they were probably old because they were like 27.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when they had me.
I just wonder, because my folks were older when they had me. My mom was like 39, I think dad was like 40 something. And they were just so chill with me. But yet, she was like 17 when she had her first kid. I can't even imagine the sort of mental immaturity you would raise a child with when you're in your early 20s. Does that do you see that directly affecting?
Yeah, it does, because I remember I was watching a documentary, and now like I'm also dealing with people who are separated or are going through a process of reconciling their relationships. I've noticed that there is a difference between a mother in her 30s as compared to a mother in her 20s, psychologically, emotionally, even financially.
Well, that's for certain for true. And so what about children born of someone in their 20s or born in someone of their 30s? Have you been able to?
Well, first of all, a lot of them I've noticed, if I can talk about the cases that I'm dealing, these are children who are byproduct of young parents. So speaking on what they're experiencing, there's a lot of emotional trauma, right? They developed a lot of emotional wounds.
From having younger parents?
From having younger parents, because some parents, there's this pressure of trying to get married really early. So sometimes you just pick the next person, or some parents, they were pregnant, and you get affected by the dysfunctionality of the relationship. And actually, one of my members even wrote a short article about it was a letter addressed to dear African parents and children. Yeah. And he was talking about what he saw, even though his parents were together. And he was saying that we were raised in broken marriages.
Yeah.
So you see, and the thing is that I've started to realize that a lot of cases I've dealt with, a lot of people saw a lot of domestic violence, right? It was so normal. And then
by violence, do you mean physical?
yes, physical violence, verbal violence. I've had also very horrific cases of even the violence being done upon the children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the way people treat each other. And then when the parents grow older, maybe some are courageous enough, they leave. So just imagine being raised in such a hostile environment. You are unaware of what mood it may be in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 1 minute your parent can be loving, the next minute your parent can be harsh. It's like an emotional roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So what happens to the child? They become hyper independent. They don't ask for help because they don't want to be disappointed. And now we're having a huge, and this is gonna start becoming bigger, where parents are complaining, my children don't come and see me. Why don't they come and see you? Because they saw you.
Mm-hmm.
They literally saw you. And they're like, not for me. I'm 8, I'm older.
Yes.
And then it's really devastating that these are the things that are happening, and it's considered normal. Like even I was in a group where this guy was translating a song that was sung in Kali.
Mm-hmm.
And the singer was basically telling men, and don't let your wife go outside and talk to her friends. If she goes disrespects you, hit her. Because we were basically trying to create a program for criminology, domestic violence, a way of trying to change the mindset and change, the criminogenic nature that is being passed on in the society, the community. And he literally translated it from word to word. And when he was done, I told him, "Are you being serious or you're just playing games? Did you really translate it well?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, he said that in his community, like I'm just talking about what he saw, and when he was doing his own research, he's like, there's a high rate of domestic violence. And so what happens is that maybe a child may say, "I will never be like my parents. I will never end up like that." And then they get triggered, and then they start to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's really important for us as people who come from this society. We have a lot of healing to do if we want to change the outcome, if we don't want to be the way these people are. Because the environment shapes us, we get influenced by it.
So what we are talking about already is the whole concept of intergenerational trauma. That's what we're addressing ourselves to, right?
Yeah, and those are the aspects of it. In our community, we'll say this person is cursed, right? This person is just like their parent. But then if we look at it from the psychological point of view, we're like, this is family history of emotional relationship. How was it? How did your grandparent build a relationship with your father or their parents? Like that. So we're quick to look at it from a spiritual point of view based on our religious. Like even now you can say, I will never, there was a situation where somebody their name was being changed because the person they were named after was a alcoholic. But then if we look at it in terms of like psychologically, biologically, you say, okay, this is, they're predisposed to it.
Yeah, my eldest brother actually changed his name. And then when he eventually told me the story, and he said he said, we're all tree sawmill family. I think that granddad ran a sawmill and dad ran a sawmill, and then they were teaching my brother how to run a sawmill. And I think he acted out. He said something angry or did something, flew off the handle, and his grandmother said, "You're a Collins. You're just like a Collins. You always will be a Collins." And he was like, "All right, well, don't want that." And so he went and changed his name.
Oh yeah, that has happened also here. Like I dealt with a case where the person was, and it's also interesting seeing because we have so many tribes, And you learn so much from dealing with these people, and you learn so much about their lives. And this was a man, at that time I was in my late 20s, I think mid 20s, and this man was old enough to be my father. And he was my, at that time I was working in the hospital, so he was my patient. That's when you say they're patients.
Yeah.
But here at Japan, we say you are a member. So.
Okay, I would still call it a patient.
Yeah,
Okay.
Even I was called a patient once upon a time. But he was saying that his mother resented him because he reminded her of his grandfather from the father's side. So all her aggression and resentment was towards him. It had nothing to do with him. He was just named after it.
Yeah,
Named
he probably
after
looked
them.
like him.
Yeah, kind of looked like him.
Yeah.
And it's really hurtful because now she's probably throwing these insults, these negative comments that become negative self-talk, that you start to have these core beliefs that I am not good enough, I am unlovable, and then you take this evidence from based off what you've experienced with her, and then you start to now, it influences your thoughts, it influences your feelings, it influences your behaviors and the consequence of it.
Does it have to be chronic, or can even a moment stick with you enough to have those things be self-conscious?
It can be even like a moment. It's like a wound to the soul, right? You just feel it, and it's so devastating. And it could be that you've been going through some other things.
Okay.
And
I notice it. Here's the thing.
yeah,
I notice it in the comedy club, where people who cover their mouths when they laugh, because they also notice that their profile pictures or whatever, they don't
Smile.
They don't show their teeth. And I talked with someone once, and I was like, do you think you have a bad smile? Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Why do you think that? Well, when they used to say, who's they? Well, this one person, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're going through your entire adult life because of one comment about the way you are thinking, not just as like a reflex that you're not aware, but actually thinking directly. I don't have a good smile. I am unattractive when they see my teeth. It's like, oh my gosh.
You know, I think it's particularly so if it's someone you deeply care about. If it's someone in a position to, like if it's your mom, your girlfriend, or someone who you really care about, and if they make a cutting comment, even just that once, it usually has this, it reduces you to, and it becomes this thing you carry throughout your life as a truth. In a way.
You know what I just thought of? This is crazy. I should not say this out loud. In a fleeting moment, my mother told me that girls probably wouldn't like kissing me because I have thin lips.
Oh, Darren, what has your experience been like?
Women love kissing. I don't know, that's funny, but like, why would you say that to a kid? Like, it's crazy.
I know, like, really. It's probably, and this is why I ask a lot of my members, like, what insecurities did you inherit?
Right.
Because you might find that the person who's doing that is projecting it onto you because that's how they feel about themselves. And this goes back to like what you're talking about with the smile. It goes back to what we call the inner child, the wounds of the inner child, the memories that you've experienced. And I always ask people, who is on the driver's seat? Is it...
What do you mean?
Who is on the driver's seat driving like your current life? Is it your inner child or is it adult you?
Oh.
Because we also develop coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms from those experiences. And those things formulate into things like, okay, now when you start to have the core belief and you have this negative self-talk, you can start to even have anxiety, which is perceived threat. Or you start to feel very low and your moods change. And I always tell people that you're a social, intellectual, and emotional being.
Okay.
But obviously intellectually, yay, number one in Kenya, we take that to the core. Like even our results are being posted on the newspaper. Like people are asked, what are you going to be? I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be all these things, right? There's this whole performance-based validation that comes that comes with it, and then what happens to the person internally have also to keep up with their expectations. Right?
So let me understand this. So when you tell them that you're all these things, what you're trying to point out to them is, listen, yeah, it's fine and dandy for you to go and score your A in school, but remember, you also need to cultivate yourself as a spiritual person, as in a social person. These other aspects of you need to cultivate them as well, because they are you. Don't.
Yes, you're more than that.
You're more than the A.
You're more than the A, and you and the thing is that even going back to what you were talking about, and you said this is somebody that is an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So just imagine, like, if they look at themselves in the mirror and they smile, they're like, oh, you're so ugly. That's what we call negative self. No, like, just as an example.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Yes.
That's what we call negative self-talk, and that's also a stressor that can also lead to a lot of, they can contribute to the development of certain mental health conditions. And that's why it's so important for us to really, I always say, we're looking at your story, we're opening the different chapters of your story that you've already closed, and we're going to try and figure out, where did it start?
Most of our trauma, in many ways, are related to our childhood, isn't it? Like a lot of us are playing out our childhood. Like in our adult life, we're trying to fix our childhood issues. Is that
difficult to fix for us in different ways?
Yeah, we try to, isn't it, like co-opt people, helpless, other humans who are in the same place, and we think that somehow they will. It's a bit of a mess, right?
It is, and it's more of also people understanding what is trauma, like what is emotions, because I've dealt with cases where people they know they're feeling low, but they don't really understand why they're feeling low, because they've minimized a lot of things. You're encouraged to minimize situation. And then if we go back to the trauma, it's a stress. It's a stress response. Yeah. It's
so acute too. I had so Friday I found out that the woman that I live on the property. I moved to Kenya and I live with a couple and elderly couple who have quite a bit of property, and I live just maybe 80 meters away from their house. And so the man died 3 years ago at age 92, and his widow, I just sort of check in on her once a day or twice a day. She had a stroke, and it was massive. And I saw her Friday morning, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why she couldn't recognize me or exactly whatever. There's a larger story to it. But then at about 1 o'clock, her son called me and said, "Hey, we know what it is now. It's a massive stroke, and we're not getting her back. She's not available to us. She's in a vegetative state." And I was like, okay. And I sort of intellectually got it, and I was just getting ready to get on the Piki to go to Sarat Center. And so got off the phone, went to Sarat Center, and I just kind of went, I'm woozy. Like I can't. This feels like death in a sense. Like that definitely feels like someone just died. And I texted him. I said, "Hey man, I'm feeling actually a little woozy, and I'm here. I just needed to reach out to someone who knew her, And he said, "Yeah, I'm kind of in a fugue state as well." And I said, "Yeah, but I'm doing these. I've got to do financial stuff right now. I don't think I can do this." And so I just walked over to this juice stand, and I just sat down for an hour and just try to get my head around, and then I was like, I need to get this stuff done. And so it was very funny that I mentioned that I should not be handling finances. I went to go make a major purchase, well, not major, a medium-sized purchase. It was like $15K, and I just handed the $15K to the person, and at the end of the transaction, they went, "You gave me $5 too much." I was like, "Oh my God!" like a really I could not work with arithmetic. I could not work with. I was not in a good state, and that trauma of just like just knowledge was so acute. I felt like I was fine intellectually at first, but like it really, it probably lasted the entire afternoon, probably 4 hours or something.
So you're reliving the emotions of a past incident.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess. But it was amazing how it actually affected my motor skills and my ability to count.
So what do you think was going on there? I mean, or ideally, would it have been better, for instance, to take in the information, the news, and then sit with it and just allow yourself time to sort of process it, or let it play itself out a bit instead of trying to, because perhaps because you have to do life, you're probably trying to override. So there's this energy coming from the news you've received, which needs attention, but you're also trying to suppress it and carry on with life. And then there is this sort of point of conflict. And that's where now you're not like...
I just assumed it was a stress response to trauma.
It
wasn't necessarily a childhood, like whatever. It was just this is happening right now.
Yes, that's what I mean. But you didn't. So sometimes I'm just thinking. Sometimes we don't just take time with it.
Right.
Immediately you get the news, you want to carry on with life. You hear it and you say, there's a part of you that registers, okay, but the rest of you is also aware. There's some sort of emotional, I don't know, like physiological response that comes with that information, but you just register it intellectually and you want to move on. But then there's the rest of you that's wants to sit with it, like come to terms with it. So you need to, okay, let me take time with this information first. I need to take time with it.
But some people have delayed reactions.
Yeah.
I also have delayed reactions.
Takes you a while to get there.
Yeah, sometimes, like, I remember the first time I ever saw really clients that, patients in the hospital that were not doing so well, right? And I was perusing through it, seeing everything. But then when I got home, I was shaking. Mm-hmm. And I did the whole day. Like, it's like you go into the survival mode.
I see.
And sometimes it takes a while. So it also varies with the individual. But it's important for people to process and understand why they feel the way they're feeling. But people do get, when you're in a state of shock, it takes a while to process situations. No.
Did you process it, Darren? Do you reckon you did? Like, have you?
No, there was aftershocks throughout the weekend. We're still in the weekend, so okay. I actually texted late last night to her son, and I said, I have this like strong feeling. I go see her, because that's what I would normally do. Like on the weekend, mm-hmm. She's in the hospital. So it's like this repetition of just like, no, it's Saturday, you're home, go check on her. That's what you should do. So that was weird because like that's unavailable. But then I thought even additionally, but in the future, when you do that, she will not be her. She's going to be a version of herself, a shell of herself. So that was like, I felt it, and it didn't make me cry or emote in any sort of way, but just sort of this weird like fog of a new reality, mm-hmm. admitting to a new change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even it doesn't even necessarily have to be like what he's going through. You can even for example, even going to see a therapist here in Kenya, and also after going also through the healing process, you still go into a state of shock that the reality is gone. Right? You have to internalize a new way of seeing the world.
Yeah. I remember going through this interesting situation where when you go for therapy, then obviously in the process of therapy, you get to learn a few things about your situation which you didn't know before. And this information points to sort of triggers some sort of grief, a feeling of maybe lost opportunities, or even because it points to maybe you having lived a lie, or your life not necessarily, at least the way you perceived it, it isn't. There are certain things which you were not aware of, and now you are, and yet you translate it in terms of, oh, so there's this incredible loss here, there is, and you actually feel like the therapy has made things a little worse for you, because you have to come to terms with the living with this new reality, which is it's not as romantic as you'd have wished it to be.
It's the thing is that when I work with new members, I always tell them that it's a journey, right? And you'll have your good moments, and you'll have moments that you'll feel very uncomfortable, because you're going to address a lot of situations that you try to avoid or suppress. And it's really important for people to understand that it's courageous for you to actually put yourself in that situation and find yourself, because it's not, sometimes you feel, oh, I feel relieved, and in other points you feel really hurt, that how could this person do this to me? I didn't realize that I felt that way. So it's a journey, and I think that's what's really important to be put out there, that you're going to go through a journey, and there are going to be bumps. And there are going to be bumps that will make you feel very intensely you want to run away. I've had members telling me, oh, can I reschedule my session? I'm like, yeah, sure. Then eventually when we meet on the date that we scheduled, then they express and they say, you know what, I felt a bit overwhelmed after that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have you had people drop out that way? Just sort of,
well,
reschedule, disappear?
Yeah, because sometimes it's not easy seeing the ugly, because everybody wants to just see the good, but then there's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of accountability you also need to account for pertaining yourself.
Yeah.
There's also the harsh reality that maybe some of the people you hope will change will not change.
What about the harsh reality that the experiences that you've had, you are replicating yourself?
That's another thing, right? It's just more of how you're going to accept this truth that was not seen as a reality.
So I have a question around that. The thing is, I have my issues. I've sort of have these coping mechanisms. I've been bobbing along. I feel like I'm half okay. And then I come to a therapist who tells me, listen, you're not okay. Ouch. Then we need to make you okay. But I've been mostly feeling like I'm okay then, but not so okay. Like, there's that sense. That's why I go to therapy. Then the process completely upends my understanding of who I am. And then you're putting me through maybe 3-4 years of just more of that, like interrogating myself and trying to orientate myself in a certain way, which is like incredibly difficult work. Hopefully at the end of it, I come out maybe more self-accepting, more, something. But there is also the option of just me staying where I am, coping the way I am, and carrying on with life. Why would I choose to put myself through that really harrowing process if I can get away with, just the question I'm asking is, if a person was to come to you and really ask you, what's the value of therapy, if it is so painful and it's likely to be, what would your answer be? Why would somebody want to go for therapy?
Because you can get to release yourself from the pain.
Because there is pain.
There is pain, there is wounds, and you can change the narrative of where you go now.
I mean, is it like physical fitness, and that, I mean, there's going to be pain.
Mental fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that as human beings, we need to understand we have feelings. It's part of our life, right? But it can allow you to build a better relationship with yourself, which will allow you to build a better relationship with the world. You'd be able to understand how to implement your boundaries. You'll be able to understand the characters that are surrounding you. You get to understand a new sense of self. But if you don't want to process the pain, then you're just going... It's a funny thing that one of my members told me, you'll just be doing mental gymnastics. It's like you will have a short-term relief and then something else happens and the way you feel is more intense.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we continue this conversation with Rubie Miseda.